Welcome to Energy Work and Healing. I'm Tricia George, an energy healer and intuitive guide, here to help you reconnect with your body, your energy, and your truth. This podcast is all about blending spiritual integrity with practicality, offering grounded insights, energy tools, and real conversations to support your healing journey. Whether you're just beginning or deep into your process, you are in the right place. Let's dive into this together. Welcome to the Energy Work and Healing podcast, and we're going to start to explore the subtle energies that actually shape our lives, deepen your awareness, and support holistic healing from the inside out. I'm Tricia George, and I'm so glad you're here, as today we're launching a brand new series that dives into the profound world of the chakra system. And the chakras are just energy centers that influence our body, our emotions, our mind, our spirit, and our soul. And over the next several episodes, we will be journeying through each of the chakras individually. That way we can unpack what they are, how they are affecting your life and how your life is affecting them, and how to work with them for healing and balance in your space. This is where we get to start at the foundation of who we are innately. We're starting at the root of it all, and we're going to get into that first chakra. The first chakra is located at the base of the tailbone, and it sits about an inch or two right in front of the tailbone. And this has to do with survival, fight or flight, food, shelter, water, and action. And these elements affect the first chakra. So the first chakra is all about feeling safe in our environment and our world. And when we feel that way, we're sort of in a homeostasis. But when we're not feeling so hot, that's when we can run into a few different issues that will actually affect the other chakras a little bit more rapidly than another chakra may. So the element that's focused on this chakra for the earth elements is literally that, the earth. It's the soil, it's the stone, it's the mountains. It's how we ground and connect to the earth when we think of a mountain, or how we connect to what we're standing on, the surface that we're on, which regards the soil. And when soil's maintained properly, right, and it's giving nutrients to the earth, it's similar to what we receive when we receive nutrients from the earth as well, because this soil doesn't only feed the plants and the trees and the animals, it feeds us. That's where we get our food source from. It's where we collect our food that actually gives us the nutrients to sustain daily life, even from the animals for some of us. So it's providing the essential nutrients that we need. And when the first chakra is healthy, it's about 6 to 8 inches in diameter, and it's spinning clockwise. So it's moving at a nice, even pace, spinning clockwise. And that's just supporting your well-being and your life. And sometimes, unfortunately, because we have experiences when a chakra could become, how do you say, like unhealthy, and it may close and it might look like an unripened fig, or it might expand to about like 2 feet or greater. And it's just because it's trying to cope. So when it goes into a fig shape, it's in shortage. And when it goes into an expanded state, it's in surplus. So we want to be conscious that the diameter of the chakra is just as important as the chakra itself, because it is a part of it. And until you get to understand what it feels like to be within specific energy centers in your body, which will take a little bit of time and practice, you're going to try to figure out how can you keep your chakras in alignment through the central channel and comfortable in the sense like they're spinning in harmony with one another. So we want to be really aware of that. But the first question that you really want to ask yourself is, are you in survival mode? I mean, are your daily needs being met? Do you have a roof over your head? Are you getting the proper nutrients in your day-to-day life? Do you feel safe? And I'm not referring to your desires, your daily stressors, or just simply being discontent with your current life situation. I'm asking, do you really have a roof over your head? Do you have food on the table? Because when we start thinking about desires and daily stressors or things that we don't have, that's not really survival. That's comparing ourselves to others or wanting something that we feel will fill a need in us that really it doesn't fill, but only like temporary, maybe a mere minute sometimes. So we want to be conscious about what is a true survival um, issue versus what is manifested, what we're creating and stating puts us in survival space, if you get that gist. So we want to make sure we're not falling into a state of survival thinking that we need more than we currently have. Because a lot of times we're actually okay right where we are, but we just feel, right? We're having a feeling, second chakra, that we're not okay. And that just sends a signal down to the first chakra to react in a state of survival, which can actually create a leak in the first chakra and cause a lot of damage on its way up our chakra system. So you can ask yourself a few things. You can ask yourself, like, what programs am I operating in? And are the programs that I'm operating in alignment with myself and what I need for my day-to-day life? And yes, we might desire to live our lives independently or differently from another person's belief system, but where are we similar to them? We all need our basic needs fulfilled. And why is it that that need or that want to have more um, gives us like a sense of desperation, right? And where it puts us in resistance, where we're not getting what we have, or we're perceiving we're not getting what we have because we want more, right? We're consumables. We want. It's like Pac-Man, right? Constantly wanting to be fed. And it could also be where you're in a relationship where you're coming out of survival, where you're staying in that relationship, even though you know it's not healthy for you, because you could be afraid of being alone or feel, right? Because you're in a codependent relationship, maybe that you're unable to survive on your own, but you haven't even given yourself an opportunity. It's basically the stories that you tell yourself that your conscious mind or your subconscious mind sort of start engaging with each other, and it's misinformation, right? Because the stories you're creating are a false sense of beliefs, right? Where you're saying, I can't live without this person. So that immediately puts you in the survival state. So how can you have the courage to overcome that and actually move forward with confidence, grace, and dignity? And how can you understand that when you're experiencing everything that the life provides you, right? Our life is full of experiencing conditions, learning, right? Creation, love, the opposite of love, right? And how can we understand that all of these elements are creating the foundation of who we are by testing us? We're getting tested all the time. And what is it in your first chakra that you allow to resurface on a constant basis? So maybe that resurfacing, saying in your childhood you were unworthy to receive something. How is it coming up in your day to day life? And does it make you feel guilty or stuck in your space? And we want to be aware of this, right? So through awareness, right, we're going to be in our sixth and seventh chakra in conscious awareness. We can actually pay attention to what's happening in our energy body rather than ignoring it or distorting it, right? So one humorous time that I always find with my clients is when they tell me that they don't want to be like their parents. And I'm like, okay. But as we're going into the session, I'm like noticing similarities. And I'm like, okay, I said, so you're living a program or a conditioned behavior based on what you experienced with your caregivers when you were a child. And they bring that all the way into their present moment, right? Because they were living under the same roof with this person for who knows how long, So it affects their first chakra because your caregivers, let's just say your caregivers were dealing with the first chakra issue when you were younger, right? And there wasn't enough money, right? Like they were living check to check. So you could actually feel that energy between your caregivers or your parents, that they were always in a constant state of survival. And if they were dealing with that and you were witnessing, right, through your eyes, through your hearing, through your sight, through your just dwelling in the home, you're going to understand that the program that you were being instilled with is that you're not safe, that you're not okay, because as that energy is running through their body, you're so open as a child, you're receiving all of that information constantly, and it's being sort of downloaded into your space. And that gives you the feeling of being anxious or unsafe in your present situation because you didn't awaken to, you didn't acknowledge that you carried that information all the way into your present moment. So, what can be the effects of that? You could feel ungrounded. You could feel fearful that something might happen, even though nothing's happening in your life, right? Your bills are getting met, everything's okay, some extra money in the bank, but you're still running that program, you know, and you might even have a physical symptom of becoming dizzy, lightheaded, where you're stumble occasionally, where you're not conscious, because you're so worried about what's going to happen because you're having an expectation that's from your past that's affecting your present moment. And you might not even know consciously that it's triggering you because it's your fears and anxieties in the first chakra, right? So fear is false energy appearing real, and anxiety is just a thought that something's not okay. So you start reenacting or creating a story in your mind that creates stress, that raises your cortisol levels, and then keeps you in a high state constantly, like you're being chased by a lion, right? So you're constantly in that state of panic or fear, and this is stemming all the way from your subconscious mind and your conditioning as a child. You haven't processed it yourself. You haven't realized that you can actually create your own new set of programs. So other times, our first chakras can be lit up or triggered just by desires alone. We're constantly ingrained in our daily lives through social media, through television, radio, anything, that we need to have more than what we do. That, one car isn't enough. One phone isn't enough. We need more. We have to have things. Do we have to have a TV in every single room of our home? And it's sort of us trying to keep up with the latest trends that are being ingrained, right? So it's coming through our eyes again, through our ears, and we're seeing it, we're watching it, we're hearing it. And that's programming us that we need to have that we have to have this in order to be okay and not be in survival, because that's what everyone else has, right? So we want to be careful of the temptations, especially nowadays with algorithms, right? Algorithms are constantly checking on us. They're looking at what we're searching on the computer, on our tablets, on our cell phones. And those algorithms are being used against us because they're using the same programming that you had when you were a child. And they're suggesting constantly in subtle ways, the same way, it's happening on the subconscious mind. And the algorithms know how to play with our emotions. I mean, how many times do they do that in the course of a day, especially nowadays since AI is out? It is huge, and now with people talking, if I don't know if you notice that, but like on TikTok or Instagram, people are talking faster. They're trying to rev you up, right? Because that revving of energy gets you in a panic state. Like, I have to have it. They say while supplies last, If the orange shopping cart's there, that means we have it. If not, you're out, So they're sending all these temptation signals to you that are actually working on your first chakra. I mean, it's all integrated into the first chakra survival because you're being coaxed into thinking that you need that next best thing, right? So we got to be really conscious and aware not to fall into the pit. So energy surplus, let's talk about that for a minute in the first chakra. So when I was saying before, like the chakra can be really big, it can be like an amoeba where it's not spinning smoothly, and it might be shaky, and this is an overwhelming state where we feel like we never have enough, whether it's not enough money, not enough food, not enough satisfaction, you name it, not enough anything. It's a craving that we want. So it will actually escalate this. So say, for example, you get a new job, let's just say hypothetically, and you're making, say, $150,000 a year, and you're so excited because your last job was 90,000. Okay. So you're really stoked, you're making 60 grand more than what you anticipated you were going to make. And then time goes by and then there's this desire like, but I want more. I want more because I want to get A, B, C, and D, and I need more income in order to have that. So we become very greedy rather than saying, how can I live at my means where I am right now and not jump into the future where we think we have to obtain more than we need. And I think this is something that becomes infiltrated in us, especially with the younger generations, unfortunately, because they're looking for instant, right? They want instant wealth, instant success. They want that big money, that we see in media all the time, but they not necessarily getting the tools that they need to actually have it. So they have to change their mindset so that they're not hungry for more, because what that hunger is actually feeding off of your ego, right? You don't necessarily need all these things, but the ego is being contaminated, let's say, by society, by the universe, that we live in, this 3D reality, this part of the universe at least, where everything's for sale, everything's a commodity, right? So we want to be very conscious of that, because surpluses in that space can make it where we're in a lot of debt. We can't afford our monthly expenses. So we want to be very conscious of that space, because money is also energy, and you need to remember that. And how you're going to use that energy is very important. Now, another surplus in the first chakra is excessive sexual behavior, where the sex or the intimacy becomes a hunger in you, and it needs to be constantly fulfilled, as you often feel like starved for connection or affection. And you might like be sourcing it out from different people, whether it's every night, every week, every other day, whatever it is. You're looking for pleasure through another individual excessively, and you're sort of not necessarily considering that other person, because you're not really doing it from a love state. You're doing it from a hunger state, saying you need this intimacy in order to survive, right? Because your needs, your hunger isn't being fulfilled, right? And rather than fulfilling the need yourself, which as human beings we can do, right? How can you realize that and come to that awareness that people, when you're engaging with these people in this level for multiple times, where you're having multiple partners simultaneously without a love state or a love connection, you're courting each and every single person you're intimate with. And that creates its own congestion in that space, right? But you're also using these individuals to feed yourself. So you're sort of like an energy vampire, where you're sucking or draining the life force energy out of that other individual, and if you use that energy in like a creative manner, creating your life, you would feel so much better and so much more satisfied, rather than using other people for you to gain your feeling, I'll say, of being full. Because those people that are using sex constantly to engage with themselves, and using another individual, you're really not gaining anything. It's a false sense because, again, we're dealing with ego energy, right? We're not really conscious and we're sort of using people to get what we need. So if you understand that, you're sort of creating all this karma with all these other people and you're sharing that energy exchange all the time, right? So you want to be very careful with that. So you don't really want to pursue others for personal gratification in order to quench your own thirst in a way, so you want to be really, really conscious of that. Another way surplus can show up, this can be in both ways, but it's kind of hard to always detect which one it is unless you're reading your energy. But addictions also show up in a surplus state when they're doing so much of a certain drug or alcohol, always trying to fill that need. And they always need more and more because their tolerance gets higher and higher. And that distracts the person from being in a survival state, because what happens is in that state, you're actually becoming unconscious. You're not present, and you actually leave your body. The soul, right? Our soul sits here, and it's also the ninth chakra, 3 feet above our head, but it leaves the body because we think it's too hard to cope with our day-to-day lives. There's too many stressors. There's too many heartaches. There's too much, emotional and mental baggage that we have. So we want to avoid it all by consuming, anything that creates an addiction, even food, wine, chocolate, you name it, anything could be an addiction. So we want to be understanding that it's usually here is alcohol and drugs, which create a survival state in excess in the first chakra. Now, just as we have excess, we also have shortage, where we're depreciating our energy, we're depleting it in the first chakra. And this is, how do I say, the opposite, right? Where this is like that fig-like shape where it's a tiny little fig and it's not moving. It's like, it's just a stuck energy. Usually I see it in black. And this is where people have closed the chakra because maybe they're having financial difficulties in the opposite direction, right? Where they don't even know where their rent money's going to come from, where they're living paycheck to paycheck, or even worse than that. They can never balance their budget. They don't even know where to start or how to even begin by balancing their budget. They never put it in a spreadsheet, for example, or wrote it down on a piece of paper. So they don't know how their spending is affecting the money that's coming in. There's no balance or system reset when it comes to their financial situations. So they're constantly stressed as to when their next payday is going to come. And God forbid that check's late, right? You're going to start freaking out because you're going to be in a survival state in deficiency, right? So you're going to be shrinking that chakra. So again, if it's 6 to 8 inches, maybe it's only going to be an inch or two in diameter, but we want to be aware of dysfunctions or spending habits that we may have that we're doing unconsciously, and how can you bring it into consciousness? You get paid 4 days out of the week, add it up. And what are your expenditures, right? How can you be financially responsible, which will help your first chakra feel more stable and secure? Because when I see this in a person, it'll actually be like a physical leak. It's almost like there's this hole in the chakra and it's like a waterfall and the money's just draining out. And I'm like watching it and I'm like, it's as if it's like pouring between your fingers, right? And it's like you have an energy leak in regards to money. So my goal is to try to heal that and try to give you at least a tool or two that you can hopefully move forward and sort of heal that energy leak in your space. Because the minute there's an energy leak, that weakens the whole chakra structure, right? And that's going to definitely affect the chakras below and above it. So we want to be careful, Also with shortages, it could be the feeling of inadequacy, right? Where we're vulnerable. And this can be in regards to intimacy, where we don't want to be seen. We want to have a relationship. We want to have a partner. We want to have love, right? but then we don't want to be intimate because we're going to judge our body. We're going to judge what they might think, our experience level maybe. But why not just have it? Why not just embrace this moment of connection with another human being? How can you create self-confidence where you're keeping that chakra nice and healthy, right? You're keeping it 6 to 8 inches rather than a shortage state where you're not worthy enough to maybe even have intimacy, or you've gotten hurt in the past, so you don't want to get hurt again. So you shrink this chakra really, really tight because you're afraid, you're running through fear, false energy appearing real, that you're going to get hurt again. And the thing is that when you say you're going to get hurt again, or you're worried about getting hurt again, you're manifesting that. You're actually bringing that into your space because it's your thought, right? And we have to realize that the first chakra is all about a word. So it's the first word we think of. So maybe the first word we think of in this space for deficiency is hurt, right? I'm going to get hurt. So then immediately that stays in the chakra. And it's like, say it's in the chakra and it's right about here. And it's saying, oh, hurt, hurt, right? And we're repeating that over and over again subconsciously as the chakra is spinning. It's like, oh, hurt, 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 right? And then all of a sudden that information is going to go up your central channel, go to your heart, go all the way up, go to your 6, and you're manifesting that. You're actually bringing it into your space, and you're bringing in what you really don't choose to have, but you're in a way wanting it, right? You don't want to get hurt. So of course you receive the hurt, right? Because you're in wanting of it. And then we want to be very aware of when we don't think we're adequate enough to have the feelings we want. Like, do we have shame around sexuality, about our bodies and how it connects to another human being? And how can we remove that so our second chakra, right, where our reproductive system is, can actually embrace the connection that we have with another human being in an intimate, beautiful way? Even if it's sort of like an engagement, maybe for the first time with somebody, you can still have love for that human being and love for the experience that they might share with you, but we don't want to get congested, right, in our thought pattern again, and make it into something or expand it or get over dramatic with it, because everything in life is just an experience. And how can we have and give ourselves permission to have those experiences? Right? Why do we have to label it? We don't have to label everything. Okay. So any shortage in the first chakra, if you think of it this way, is a suppression thought. Anything that makes you smaller, that makes you not worthy, right? And we want to be very careful, because the minute we go into surplus or shortage, it's going to start affecting the other chakras, especially if it's there for an extended period of time. We want to be really aware of that, because say we're holding that feeling of, I cannot be loved by another human being, or I'm never going to receive love, however you want to say it. And you've been holding it in your past, say for the past 10 years, right? If this is present moment, maybe 10 years is about here in your timeline, and you've been saying that for 10 years, your body's believing that already, right? So how can you shift the information? How can you communicate to yourself different through maybe your throat chakra, so you can actually use your solar plexus chakra, which is your third, to move through your life with confidence and certainty, knowing that you deserve to have everything that you actually would like to have and would, crave. And we want to understand that when that first chakra is in a homeostasis, we are secure and we're stable, right? Our foundation's on the ground. We're comfortable in our space, and nothing can really move us from that, because we're using, and we'll learn about this later, is the 10th and the 11th chakras in the arches of our feet. And all of that has to do with balance, grounding, how we move through our life. And those two chakras on underneath us will support us, right? It's going to support the foundation. Because if we remember that the 11th chakras, which are the arches of the feet, they're going to support us as we stand on the surface of the earth, right? And then the 10th is permeating through that earth. And we're bringing that energy up our body into our central channel to our first chakra to say that we're okay, we're safe, and everything's all right. So we want to be very conscious of what programs we're actually telling ourselves, what programs we learned in the past this way, right? To the left is to the past all the time. And how can we, as a creator, right? We're all creators in this life, actually change our frequency, our information, our limiting beliefs, our thought process, how we think and feel. How can we give ourselves permission to have that? We have to make a conscious choice to break free from root chakra wounds, from first chakra triggers, right? And everything comes from our past. Triggers are coming from the past because we're taking something from the past and we're comparing it to something in the present. And the fastest way to do this is through grounding our space, to owning the area that dwells in and around us. And it's the easiest way, it's the fastest way, and it's the best way to secure yourself to your own information, because your information is the most important part. And how can you be patient and work on a little bit at a time and know that you're supported in this journey? I thank you for checking out this episode of the chakra series. And I'd like you to stay tuned for the next episode where we're going to dive into the essence of our second chakra and everything that that has to do with our creation space, our reproductive system, and our feelings. Thanks for tuning in. And if you think someone would like this podcast, please feel free to share, and I would love it if you could subscribe as well. Take care, and I'll talk to you soon. Thank you for joining me on Energy Work and Healing. If today's episode resonated with you, be sure to subscribe, share it with someone who might need it, and leave a review. Remember, your energy matters, and your healing helps heal the world. Here, we honor the path of blending spiritual integrity with practicality so you can walk empowered, aware, and aligned. Until next time, stay grounded, stay open, and keep listening to the wisdom found within.